I'll tell you one thing. You have the guts, go fight Russia. Don't shoot off the shoulders of Ukrainians. You don't have the guts. You don't have the guts to take them on directly. You shoot off the shoulders of the Ukrainians. You compromise on morality across the world, across decades. And when the question is being thrown back at you, only outrage. General Bakshi will respond to you tonight, sir. Let me tell you, we have the spunk and the courage, but you don't have the ability to take my question. No, you started World War III, you started World War II, you're profiting, your companies are profiting from the war.
Professor, with your...
GD Bakshi is on the debate, ladies and gentlemen. GD Bakshi.
Professor, can somebody else express an opinion? Thank you, sir. This is a debate, I thought, not a monologue or a harangue. Thank you, sir. Can I, Professor? Thank you for the courtesy. Thank you. Professor, you know, in Bangladesh, 3 million Bangladeshis were killed, 1 million Bangladeshi women were raped, 10 million Bangladeshis were driven out into India as refugees.
Where was your moral spunk then?
We didn't hear a word of moral outrage then. To the contrary. You're the full argument, Professor. Come on. Along with the 7th Fleet.
It's all irrelevant. Stop trying to judge.
Along with the 7th Fleet.
Justify.
Where, Professor Saab, I heard you with silence. I heard you with courtesy. Hear the full argument. I mean, don't feel so nervous. Don't feel so nervous that you have to speak constantly.
You were asked to condemn.
Just hear the other side. You know, Professor, what was it when you attacked Iraq? 40 days of non-stop bombing. That was not invasion. What was it when you attacked Yugoslavia? 80 days of non-stop bombing. That was not invasion. That was not atrocities. That was not attacks on the civilian population and infrastructure. What about Libya? What about Syria? This is a very interesting
I find this very interesting that what you do, General, I find it very interesting that the professor doesn't want to hear you. No, one second. See, Professor, I'll tell you one thing. In any civilized debate, it is extremely important that if the other side presents a very strong point of view, you must have the moral spunk and courage to listen to it, and then obviously the intellectual canvas to respond to it. I request you, sir, please do not respond by speaking over the other individual. This is not the way to debate. Please allow the other side to present its point of view. However, since you broke that rule, I'll tell you one thing to counter your argument about small countries. Professor Sked says this is about big countries being bad to small countries, to which I give a simple answer. Captain Alok Bansal is on the debate. I say Serbia was a small country. The United States of America was a big country. And the United States of America, which talks about territorial integrity, right, happily rejected the territorial integrity of Serbia to recognize Kosovo because it was convenient. Now you refuse to recognize the Donetsk People's Republic because it is strategically unhelpful to do so. So don't tell me about big countries and small countries, and I'm telling you things that happened a few years back. I'm not going back a century. So that's my response to you. I'd like to hear other views as well.
At the time of Kosovo, I objected to what the Americans were doing. I object to what India's doing today, which is giving succor to an imperialist lunatic.
No, let me clarify, Professor. First thing, when you talk of big country and small country, we saw a naked aggression against one of the tiniest country. Grenada was invaded by United States. If you go back to history and you look at how invasions are. As far as the present conflict is concerned, we need to also understand how West and NATO have aggravated Russia's insecurities. When Soviet Union disintegrated, an assurance was given that the NATO would expand eastward. That assurance was not kept. In fact, the very raison d'etre of NATO after the disintegration of Soviet Union and Warsaw Pact did not exist. So why keep an organization that threatens somebody else? Now, what happened with Russia and Ukraine is similar to what happened with US and Cuba during the Cuban crisis. So isn't it something for which the West also should take certain amount of responsibility for threatening Russia, for creating a situation where Russia had to intervene? So, and secondly, what all humanitarian crisis which is being projected is also being projected by the Western media, which to my mind to some extent is doctored at this juncture, probably giving a slightly flawed projection of things which are happening. Of course, some of it could be right. And India has maintained a neutral stance, because that neutral stance is essential, because if peace has to be brought in, both sides have to come to some amount of compromise. It cannot be done by just condemning one side, because they also have certain valid grounds for indulging into this sort of an act.
Okay, I'd like Mr. Bitterlich to please respond. If you can hear me, please, sir.
Yes, I can.
Yes,
hear
sir.
you well.
From Normandy, please.